Welcome back for the next installment in YouTube's C# tutorials. In this one we're going to deal with loops. Loops are pieces of code that repeat over and over and over again until a condition is met. In this sample we're going to be working with a for loop, a while loop, and a do while loop, and I will illustrate the differences between each one. Before we go any further, I did want to bring to your attention this is called a list box object, which you can bring over from here. You drag it over. You click on it and you will see that I named it list. LST is the Hungarian notation, list loop output. Alright, when we're dealing with lists, you have items. So let's go look at the clear button. Right here we have text number clear and we have text number focus. That causes the cursor to be placed in it. And notice here's the list box, which I call list loop output. And when I want to clear it, I got to do .items.clear. So I got to add this piece to clear it out. Just want to make sure everyone knew that. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to put a number in here, and depending on which button you press, the code's going to loop over and over and over again and put the output here till the condition's met. We're going to start simple, and I will have future postings that show another example of a loop. Alright, let's go take a look at the for loop. Okay, you can notice with all my code I have the same step 1, declare. We have validate and convert. Here we have calculate, and we'll come back to that in a minute, and we have output. Okay, so let's take a look here. Notice I list loop output.items.clear. I clear it out, and I put into it sample for loop. And of course this is standard code that we've been working with for a little bit now. You take the text box, .text, try parsing as an integer, and if it works out okay, put the value in here. Else not, it's okay, or it did not work, a message box pops up. So I'm going to put a breakpoint right here. Alright, so a for loop has 3 parts. You start it with the for. You have what we start with, what number we start at. We have a semicolon that separates part 1 from part 2. This is part 2. This is kind of like an if statement. As long as the count, the int loop count, is less than or equal to the maximum number, which the user enters, we stay in the loop. And part 3, notice it's another semicolon, is how we add 1 or increment the counter. So where we start, how long we keep continuing, and how we increment. I also call them the 3 I's. The initializer, this piece of code only happens once per loop. This is the iterate. This controls how we keep iterating or repeating the loop. And step 3, or part 3, is increment. See right here, you can read the comment that tells you that. Notice with the for, it's kind of like an if statement, but instead of if, we put for. We have parens. We have another ending paren. No semicolon right here. Here's the start of the loop. Here's the end of the loop. This is the code that keeps repeating till the condition is met. Alright? Let's try running it. I'm going to put 5 to keep it simple, and then click on the for loop. So when we get to this point, we were able to convert the number successfully. So the max number is 5. That's how many times we want to go through the loop. We clear out the list box. We start at 1. You'll notice this piece of code will only happen once. I'm hitting F10 to step through the code. And right here I say, is 1 less than or equal to 5? The answer is true, and then we enter the loop. Notice at the beginning of the loop, the end of the loop. And all we do is put 1, or the value that's in int loop count, out into the list box. And notice we come up to part 3. We have a 1 plus plus makes it 2, and it comes back to here. This only happens once. Is 2 less than or equal to 5? Yes. We enter the loop. We put it out to the screen. We increment. 2 plus 1 is 3. Is 3 less than or equal to 5? Yes. We enter the loop. It becomes 4. Is 4 less than or equal to 5? True. We enter the loop. We add 1 to 4. Becomes 5. Is 5 less than or equal to 5? It's true. We enter the loop. Now 5 becomes 6. Is 6 less than or equal to 5? False. Notice we skip over all this. Oh, I hit the wrong button and I want to run. I hit F5. See, the loop went through 5 times. Alright, it's clear. And now let's go look at the other buttons. A while loop. Because remember, a for loop, quick summary, you initialize what you start with, how you keep checking if you stay in the loop, and how you increment one to it. Let's go back over here and look at the while loop. The while loop is a little easier. Notice the top part here, from here to here, is exactly the same. The difference is we're doing a while loop. In a while loop, you write like an if statement. Notice the parens and some condition. I'm going to have to, I don't have an initialized part of the loop, I just have a condition. A while loop is just a condition. So what I've done is I initialize or set the int loop count to 1 up here. And max number is whatever the user enters and is converted. So, for example, first time through is 1 less than or equal to, say, 5. The user enters. We stay in the loop and we increment. We put 1, we add 1 to it, and we come up and we say it's 2 less than or equal to 5, and we keep continuing. Notice it's like an if statement. No semicolon here. Beginning of the loop, the end of the loop. Let's put a breakpoint and we'll see how this one works. So, for simplicity, let's have this loop go through 3 times. And we're going to click on the while loop. Remember, I set int loop count up here when I declared it. Always declare your variables all together. Is 1 less than or equal to 3? And the answer is true. I hit F10. I add to the items in the list output whatever the count is. After this line executes, it did a plus plus. So 1 became 2. When we come up here, is 2 less than or equal to 3? True. We enter the loop. 2 gets put out, then we add plus plus to it. After it puts it out to the screen, 2 plus 1 is 3. Correct. And we come up, is 3 less than or equal to 3? True. We output it, we plus plus it, and now we come up and we have a decision. Is 4 less than or equal to 3? And the answer is false. And we exit. So this is written almost like an if statement, but you put a while, and this block of code is repeated over and over again till this condition has been met. And there you have the output. Now let's go look at the third type of loop, which is a do while. Actually, C# has 4 types of loop, and we're only going to concentrate on 3. Notice I set the loop count to 0. That's different than what I've done before. Max number I initialize to 0. The max number gets set here. And we come in, we clear, and we put out just an example of do while loop. Now if you look here, we set the int loop count to 1 here. I could have done that up here, but I decided to do it here just to do it a different way. Notice here's the do. That marks the beginning of the loop. This is what repeats, and here's where we check. So what happens is the code drops down, then checks and says, should I go back up and do it again? So the difference is between this loop, a do while, and the one I just showed you right before, the while, is it always executes once, then checks to see if it needs to do it again. So let's put a breakpoint right here, and let's see how this one works. And for simplicity, we'll just put a 2 in. Do while loop. We come in. Notice we didn't check, we just enter the loop. So we put a 1 out to the screen, and when we're done, we increment it with a plus plus. So 1 goes out to the screen, and now that's a 2 because I told add it. Is 2 less than or equal to 2? And the answer is true. So it goes back up, puts a 2 out to the screen, then increments it to 3. Is 3 less than or equal to 2? False, and we don't execute again. Now I'm going to show you something. Watch, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Because we check at the bottom of the loop, it will work. We go through, loop is set to 1, we have a 1, then a plus plus makes it a 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 1? False, it doesn't execute again. Just to demonstrate how it will go at least once here, I'll put a 0 and click on do while. And then we step through the code, and notice there's no check. Even though we told the loop to go 0 times, it will go through once. And notice it went through 1 time even though it had a 0 because it checked at the bottom. It entered the loop, did what we asked it to, and went back and did not go back up because we checked. Now notice if I do a 0 here, let's see what happens with the for loop. We start at 1, and we say, is 1 less than or equal to 0? Notice the loop does not execute. Very different than the do while. Let's do a while loop and see what happens. We say while 1 is less than 0, and the 1 was set up here in case you're wondering, up here. And that is false, so notice this loop doesn't execute at all either. So hopefully you know, this is where you tell it where to start, how to keep looping, and how to increment, the 3 I's. Initialize, iterate, increment. This condition, you only need a condition to check if you want to keep looping, and it checks before. And this one checks after the first execution.